Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for Tuesday, September 30th, 2025. It's 9:03 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Commissioner Yoli Klaus, Vice Chair Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Caroline Mejia, and Commissioner Rachel Grant on our Zoom platform. County Manager Leonard Hernandez, Assistant County Manager Jennifer Walker, Josh Cummings, Clerk of the Board Amy Davis. The meeting will be recorded and posted to the YouTube channel within 24 hours. Written public comment will be received up to 2 hours in advance of the meeting and distributed to the board. Action may be taken at this meeting. First up is a second review of this afternoon's business agenda. My recollection was there wasn't much to do or follow up on, but I'll go to the clerk.
There are just a few updates to the agenda. The first update is consent item number 3. And that is to set a public hearing for the proposed ordinance creating Thurston County Long Lake Management District number 25, along with the second public hearing for this afternoon, which is the public hearing on the resolution of findings and determinations for the management district. Is here.
Morning, Stuart. Come on up, Stuart.
Morning, Commissioner Stuart Whitford, Environmental Health Manager. Yeah, so today would be a public hearing for the resolution and findings and determinations for Long Lake LMD. This is the next step in the LMD formation process. Really what this is about is basically saying that there's enough evidence in place that based on the history of the LMD and based on the petition results and based on all of this information that you guys are still resolving to form this district, but this places that in the hands of the people in the LMD boundaries for an election essentially. So if this resolution is approved today, public hearing, and then the resolution is approved, then we'll be mailing out the ballots tomorrow afternoon to the people in the LMD boundaries. Simultaneously, we need to set the public hearing date for the ordinance that would create the LMD if the election goes in the positive. And so we have to set that. So that would be on November 4th, would be the public hearing on the ordinance. Then the final would be, if all goes that direction, then would actually to be turn our attention to the role of assessment and finalizing the role of assessment for 2026, which is another opportunity for the public to have comments. And just so you know, we do have 6 or 7 really good comments already by email, which will be sent to Amy at noon, and you guys can read through those, but there's suggestions on changing rate structure. There's just questions about why am I being charged this? What's the calculation base? City of Lacey is wondering how is their rate calculated, and so we're working on responding to all these comments. So it's been a good process so far.
So Stuart, just for clarity, item number 3 on the board agenda sets the public hearing, and the public hearing takes place. So this is in honor of Long Lake trying to continue the efficient process for their approval.
Yes.
And Long Lake has been included in these discussions, and they appreciate the board taking this action in this way.
And just as a reminder, commissioners, there is a time frame that this needs to move forward. So really appreciate Stuart and the public health team for working quickly to move this and get this on the agenda.
So I'll obviously give folks a little bit of latitude when we get to public hearing, because this is kind of confusing. And I'm assuming that the public might be confused about, like exactly what am I giving comment on today versus what am I going to be giving comment on the 4th versus what am I going to be giving comment. So can you restate today's public hearing? What should the comments be focused around? You're saying it's the foundation for the justification for even having a lake management district, period, not how the rates are calculated.
No, anything that's been presented thus far in the resolution of intention, the findings and determinations, where it lays out the basic rate structure. And also at this time, everyone in the LMD has received a direct mail letter from us that indicates what their proposed rate is. So we've had comments on that. So
that will be appropriate for this.
Oh, yes, for sure. In fact, one of the divisions, Cannon Grove 5, is requesting to be removed from the LMD because they were never granted access to a common park that Cannon Grove has. and they don't have the key to the lock and they're refused access. So they're saying is we don't have access to the lake. We want out.
So that's a good preview.
Yes,
But we'll have those public comments and then we'll have the discussion on the public comments after the hearing.
yeah,
But the idea would be to take action today.
So the action is set a public hearing.
But no, I'm talking about the public hearing.
And if you would like to, after the comments, if you'd like to take action, you can. If not, you can have a meeting about the officer. He's providing a preview of what you might hear.
I'm asking, because of these compressed timelines, can we, if there's comment, because those sound like meaty issues, honestly.
Yep.
Removal of someone, so will the timeline allow for us to have a
Yeah.
follow-up and not have to take action?
yeah,
today?
plenty of time. In fact, I've already been in conversation. I was in conversation multiple times yesterday with them. We're working together to address it. So.
Okay, anything from other board members to ask Stuart? Okay, thank you.
A couple of other additions to the agenda for today are consent items 5 and 6. Those are appointments to the Noxious Weed Control Board, as the board discussed last week.
Yes, okay, I remember those appointments.
That was all for this.
Okay, any questions on the agenda for this afternoon?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Commissioner Klaus.
I would like to postpone one of the voucher list items to allow for some follow-up with the county manager, on a couple of the items on the voucher list for, I believe it's the August 25th one, but I can double check.
I'm looking as well, because I know you.
All right, I had it up. Okay. Yeah, the 825 to 829. I have a couple questions about that one. We could postpone that to the next meeting. Be appreciated.
Um,
Can I
I think-
ask, what are the questions?
These are questions that you communicated me about. Do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, so there's a couple items that indicate that the sheriff's office used public safety tax to purchase a helicopter. And I wanted to check in with the county manager about that before we approve the voucher list.
Commissioner McGee?
Yeah, thank you. So those are, I talked to the sheriff about those because I had questions about it as well. And so when I looked through it, and this is not for the purchase of the helicopter. If you remember, the sheriff has been on this grant waiting list, which he got approved. These expenses where it came from a large donation that he received for the helicopter improvements.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I looked into it a little bit and it does seem like the helicopter itself was a donation from the military, which is kind of consistent with what we heard last year, but we still denied the request last year. And the transport from South Carolina to Olympia was 14,800. And there was also a purchase of rotor straps for 6,700. And there were other voucher lists that I believe may have already been approved, but I'd have to go back and check, that were about the same amount. So from what I could tell on the voucher lists that I found, there was close to 30,000 in expenditures for this helicopter, and we haven't heard anything about it. So that's why I wanted time to check in with the county manager about that before approving those voucher lists.
County manager correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection was that there was a discussion and then there was some follow-up, I think, with the sheriff, and then even though he may not need our budget approval, there was a commitment from the sheriff to kind of come back to the board and circle back and talk about it. And I guess if my recollection's accurate, I would just maybe, is that, it is?
It is, Chair, yes.
So my suggestion would just maybe be remove this item and have direct the county manager to follow up with the sheriff to come, just talk to the board about what's going on, just so we're looped in.
Yeah, my recommendation would be, what's the meeting after the 7th, Amy?
October 21st.
We can move the voucher list to October 21st. And then we'll have the time to work with the sheriff. Have time to work with the sheriff to come back and schedule a board work session.
That would be awesome. That would be much appreciated.
Okay, I'm being told the upper left corner is a sheriff's office rep, so I'll give them the floor if there's someone from TCSO.
Hey, yeah, this is the sheriff. So we did present back to the board last year about the acquirement of a free helicopter through the DRMO program. I don't recall the board telling us no. That was never discussed. That was never something that was communicated to me. What we did tell you was that if this turned into something more serious, then of course we would come back and present. We presented to the county manager and their staff. The county manager said it was a great presentation. We have not had a chance to get back before the board, obviously, with how busy the board has been with all the different things that have been going on. However, the opportunity was there for us to get this helicopter delivered. Additionally, on top of the delivery of the helicopter, the sheriff's office, who previously had it, offered to sell us about $250,000 worth of equipment for $10,000. I do not need board approval to do that, and the sheriff's office has received 2 large anonymous donations. One in the amount of $19,000, a second in the amount of $17,000. So in addition to my existing budget authority, I also have donated funds to cover this. So we are more than happy to come back and present to the board. I also have I will be presenting to each of you a letter of support from all of our regional partners, from fire to fire chiefs to emergency management. There are scenarios where, in order for the county to get full refundment from the federal government for natural disasters, they need a good, clear picture of the damage. We've agreed to assist the county in those operations for emergency management purposes for full federal refunds. So this is a great program. I'm really excited for it. The budget challenges might delay it. We might have to find alternative revenue sources, obviously, but this is going to be a valuable program, especially for the low dollar cost that we're getting in at. Thank you.
Sheriff, is there any concern about the county manager's suggestion that we just have a, since you said you meant to follow up, and once we get through some of these budget decisions, we can bring you back. What was the proposed date?
Moving this item to the October 21st meeting, and then we can come back probably in 2 weeks with the sheriff if the schedule allows.
I mean, is that okay, just given that we were?
That is perfect. Okay. That would be awesome. And again, we have met with our fire department to give them the presentation. We've updated the presentation from the last time we met with each of you. And we have conversations about how we intended to fund that had no general fund impact.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't remember us saying no. I just remember us we didn't say yes, and there was basically, we were kind of shelving it for a while because you were working on other programs, and I did remember that we were going to circle back together to talk about it. There was a newspaper article about it, and I actually got a bunch of community input about it at the time. I've learned a lot more about it since that, so I think it'd be good for just public transparency, just so that we talk it through in a public meeting, and then we can move forward. So
absolutely.
Is that direction appropriate for the board? This county manager's outlined. I see Commissioner Fournier.
Yeah, moving forward, that sounds good for me. And I just also want to reiterate, I do not recall the board making any decision or saying no to anything. We had some initial presentations. We were learning about it, and we're still learning about it. And I respect and recognize that the sheriff does have some independent authority to make decisions. So, and we'll figure that out. And I look forward to the presentation. And this is an important piece of equipment that is missing from our emergency response capabilities, search and rescue, things like that. So I welcome the discussion.
Anyone else? Commissioner Grant? Okay with the follow-up discussion? We will remove the item for just for that one voucher for today, just as a matter of,
So we'll have to do that in the meeting since it's already on the posted agenda. Okay.
Commissioner Grant, anything you wanted to add? Okay,
No, I just wanted to make sure I responded.
okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, any other items from the September 30th? That's this afternoon's business agenda to address? Okay. Then next up is to do a first review of next week's agenda. Today is a fifth Tuesday, so we'll have another meeting business meeting next Tuesday, October 7th. Meeting to be called to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of allegiance to be led by Commissioner Grant. Land acknowledgement, approval of agenda. We have a presentation related to a proclamation for national. Okay, Commissioner Grant.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that I am scheduled to be in Ellensburg next week for the Board of Health training. And so I won't be able to do, I know you guys have had to push me doing the Pledge of Allegiance a few times, but I will not be in person. And so I won't be able to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
No problem.
Okay.
Clerk's got it noted. Proclamation for National Arts and Humanities Month.
Yeah, for this proclamation, we have a few speakers joining us, and those are the representatives from the Arbutus Folk School, Tenino Arts, and the Washington Center. We'll also have other attendees here for the meeting, including our 2025 art contest winners who have been invited, and a few other groups. So we're excited for this one.
And the speakers will be all those different groups.
The Arbutus Folk School,
Yeah.
Tenino Arts, and the Washington Center.
Okay. Questions on the proclamation? All right. Then we'll have public comment related to items on the agenda. County manager's update.
I don't have anything to report at this time.
Okay. Consent agenda, we have items 1 through 4. Number 1 is voluntary stewardship program contract renewal.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is the renewal of our voluntary stewardship program, and this is with the State Conservation Commission. So they renew them on a 2-year cycle. This year, we're being awarded $290,000. What we are requesting is that you authorize the CPED director to execute the contract and any amendments that do not exceed 10%, and then to also authorize the county manager to accept all cost share amendments. So in addition to this 2-year contract that we have with the State Conservation Commission, the Conservation District is really good about applying for cost share project funding. So that's funding to build manure storage sheds, to do conservation projects. What happens is that they come throughout that 2-year cycle. And I think last year we had to bring 4 amendments to this contract before the board just to accept those funds because they are always in excess of 10%. And so this go around, to make it more efficient, we're asking for you to authorize the county manager to sign off on just the acceptance of those cost share dollars, which get passed through to the Conservation District to implement those conservation projects.
Any questions for Ashley? See some thumbs ups. You might have said it, you went through a lot there.
Oh, sorry.
The 290, is that like, is this program, is that a normal amount we get? Is this program expanding or contracting, or
It
is that
is-
looking towards?
It is expanding. As of the last cycle, they are providing additional funding specifically for monitoring. So that is in the range of $40,000 to $50,000 additional that we're getting in both the last cycle and this upcoming cycle.
So how many, I don't know if this is the right question. Do we have a certain number of property owners or projects that are like under VSP?
VSP, it's really more of an approach. So any agricultural operator that was practicing agriculture pre-2012, like pre-July 2012, is automatically considered a part of our voluntary stewardship program. And even going beyond that, I mean, really any agricultural operator would be able to apply for cost share funds. The goal is really to get conservation projects on the ground. And that's where our partner helps us.
I guess what I'm asking is like when if there's money for monitoring, what are we monitoring? Like how many things how would we apply those dollars to things that have been done to see
Yeah.
if they're working?
So the monitoring we do is to any kind of impacts to critical areas. So this last year, we just finished up our 10-year monitoring report, and it actually showed improvement across all the different critical area functions and values. And that monitoring ranged from groundwater monitoring to on-site monitoring of conservation projects.
So maybe a little more specific, like a hedgerow keeps the cows out of the water.
Yeah, exclusionary fencing is a really easy one. You've got cows that are currently crossing streams or drinking straight from the streams. And so offering up funds to put in exclusionary fencing so they can't access those streams. And then in coordination with that, building a watering tank somewhere else on the site. But usually it's not just one project, it's a collection of projects that are really all about trying to protect our critical areas.
So then the monitoring on that project could be sampling the water to see if the fecal residue has reduced from the cows not being in the water.
Multifaceted program. What I will say is that we really are a model for the state in terms of how we approach it, both from the level of conservation projects we're seeing on the ground. We've got some, as you're all aware, some rock star ag operators here in the county that are embracing of conservation work. And then pairing that with all of the great monitoring that we do, because we have such a strong technical resource base in CPED and environmental health.
But the primary goal is to get this money out into the community.
A lot of it goes to the conservation district to provide direct technical service. We hold on to a little bit of it to help fund our agriculture program manager, because he's responsible for doing all the county monitoring and just a lot of the relationship management with the ranchers. But yeah, a lot of it goes straight out onto the ground.
Literally.
It does.
Is that report that you mentioned something that's like a link I could look at, or?
The state didn't make that easy for us. You enter the report into an access database. So what you get out is a very wonky, basically spreadsheet of data inputs.
All right. Other questions? PSP? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Item 2 under consent is collective bargaining agreement with Thurston County Captains Association.
Maria.
Good morning, Commissioners. Maria Fonte, HR Director. Today I'm presenting the contract with the Captains Association. It's the third and final of the uniformed personnel in the Sheriff's Office. Their bargaining unit has ratified the contract, and upon board action will be effective from January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2027. Do you have any questions?
Questions for Maria? No, like it's the final step of a very long process.
Very long, over a year. Thank you.
Next up is interagency agreement for grant funding for overtime traffic emphasis patrols.
This is a
Sheriff's Office item.
Harry, is anyone from the sheriff's team available?
That was Sheriff Sanders last time. Sheriff, you still there?
Oh, sorry, we were in our meeting. Was there something that you wanted from us?
There was an item from your office, interagency agreement for grant funding for overtime traffic emphasis patrols on for next week's agenda. So we just wanted a little
Yeah.
background on that.
Yeah, this is through Target Zero. It's just a grant funding in the amount of $20,000. It's provided through a pass down through NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And this is just the overtime details that we sporadically put out throughout the year, like on Memorial Day weekend, New Year's Eve, those kinds of holidays, and in some high frequency areas to do any kind of like Target Zero enforcement. Could be DUI, distracted driving, whatnot. So it's just a $20,000 grant. And we've had this funding for the last 15 years.
Any questions on that one from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Voucher list for September 15, 2025. No questions on that. We have a couple department items. The first is Central Services Contract Award for Israel Road Building Remodel.
Rick is pinch hitting for Kim, who is out of the office right now.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rick Thomas, Central Services Capital Projects Planning Manager. On September 19th of 2025, a total of 4 bids were received to renovate the building located at 1111 Israel Road in Tumwater. Bids were received in response to advertisements in the Nisqually Valley News and the Daily Journal of Commerce and posted on the Builders Exchange of Washington website. The low responsive bid was received from Construct Inc. of Tumwater with a total bid of $1,609,800. This work includes, but is not limited to, the following: to renovate the building to include secure evidence storage with a walk-in cooler, freezer, a workout area with associated locker rooms, a large dividable training room, a secure entry lobby, security film on the exterior windows for critical operations, clean and paint the exterior siding, installation of a fence around the parking area, and an emergency generator. The project is in the 2025 to 2030 capital improvement plan and is in alignment with the county's strategic plan initiative number 16. Provide safe, secure, accessible, and functional facilities to effectively house county services and the associated workforce. So the request would be for approval to award the contract for the renovations of project number C34401 to Construct Inc. of Tumwater, Washington, for a total of $1,609,800, and authorize the Director of Central Services to execute the contract and any amendments that do not exceed 10%. Any questions from the board?
Rick, does that estimate fall within kind of where the numbers that we would have been discussing up front?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was about $800,000 below budget. So
I was gonna say, it sounded lower. I didn't want to be overly hopeful.
That's
That's why I asked.
Say that again, Rick?
Yes, it was about $800,000 under our budget. I do want to, I really want to acknowledge the Sheriff's Office. They worked very diligently with us to be very reasonable in regards to their respects to what we needed to do to renovate the building and make it ready for them.
That's wonderful in this situation, everything that's going on. I appreciate the sheriff and your team for working that through and getting a competitive price. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for?
Any other questions?
No, okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next up is a public works item, contract award for stormwater facility cleaning services.
Good morning. Morning, Commissioners. Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager with Public Works. This item is a request for the board to approve a contract award for stormwater facility cleaning services to Olson Brothers Provac of Kent in the amount of $750,000 plus a 10% contingency, and authorize the Director of Public Works to execute the contract. This contract is the result of an RFP that was previously authorized, in which we had 3 proposals come in. Olson Brothers was the highest rated proposal. The contract consists of a 1-year base and up to 4-year optional renewals. All expenditures of the contract would be funded by the Stormwater Fund in support of maintenance of our infrastructure and maintaining compliance with our municipal stormwater permit.
Any questions on the stormwater facility cleaning service item? Nope.
Thank you.
Moving forward. Public comment related to general matters, and then we have commissioner committee reports. And then we have a 3:30 public hearing on the 6-year transportation improvement program.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt Huntsman, Thurston County Engineer. It's that time of year again. It's time to adopt a tip. This public hearing is to receive comment on the proposed 6-year transportation improvement program for the calendar years 2026 to 2031. Becky Kahn will be providing a summary of what is included in the tip, including the legal and regulatory requirements, revenues and expenditures for the road fund, programs used to prioritize public works projects, the annual 6-year and 20-year transportation plans, summary of project changes that are in the updated tip, and we'll be discussing the bridge index, which we're required to submit to the County Road Administration Board each and every year. Once adopted, the tip satisfies the legislative requirements for transportation growth management and for the distribution of state and federal dollars for transportation projects. To date, we have not received any comments. Uh-oh.
No, not a hard one, Matt. So for the tip, this one is approved at the end of the year, kind of the same way that as everything is going through.
It gets adopted with the budget.
The budget, yeah.
Required to be approved in advance of the board.
Thank you. That was it.
Any other questions for Matt? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That completes first review of any questions, Madam Clerk, about the October 7th and what we might want to follow. Was there anything we needed to follow up with?
Nothing from the October 7th agenda.
Okay. Okay, but obviously there might be changes and stuff, and you'll bring that to our attention next week. Okay. So next up is Commissioner Office Budget Review, non-departmental, and I say something up front, and the county manager can correct me if I've got it wrong. I think this was something we might do, but the reason we were planning to do that this morning was kind of in response to the board's desire to restore JASCOM funding from last meeting. So, and looking at how that might be offset. Before we get to that though, I kind of wanted to bring up an item that I think I've individually kind of flagged this for each commissioner yesterday, but there may be another pathway to solve that problem and some others. So in looking through, all of the budget documents, which is what we've all been doing like incessantly over the last few weeks, the last kind of summary from Budget Manager Summer was talked about a very wide range related to reversion from offices and departments, wider than normal, and I think that's because the work we've been doing on the budget, there's been slowing down of filling positions and spending by the part. So we're looking at potentially, what might have been 5 million would be, or 4 million, could be up to 10 or 11 million is my understanding. And I guess seeing that and understanding the extremely tight situation that we're in and the holes that we still have to patch, I guess I wanted to raise the possibility for the board discussion. I'll start out by asking the county manager and the budget manager to maybe talk about this funding, what the board could do with it potentially while still meeting, basic cash flow requirements, and what would be kind of the pros and cons of doing that.
Sure.
And see if the board wanted to use this, it's kind of another rock in a way that is just kind of manifesting and could help us with some of these really, really difficult gaps that we're seeing.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it was mid-September, Budget Manager Summer Miller sent out an email and flagged that the reversion rate could be anywhere from high 4 point something million to just over 10 million. And I would appreciate that range and appreciate her tracking that. As we have been talking about the budget for several months now, it is apparent that offices have slowed down some of their spending and even hiring. So that's gonna push the reversion to the higher amount. What we normally do with reversion, we take that one-time funding and roll it into available fund balance. Our fund balance for 26 and 27 is still below the 2-month threshold that we need to move forward. However, because we're in such fiscally constrained times, the board could take a portion of that reversion rate and use it towards the 26 number. Again, it's our hope that in 26, we see revenues start to creep up a bit. As part of the conversation, just as a remembrance, we are working on the 26 number of the 36 million. But in all the forecasts, it shows an additional 14 million in 2027. We've decided not to address that at this time because our hope is that revenues and the cooling of expenses help balance that out, and that sales tax starts to pick up, as well as the housing market. So there's an option for the board to contemplate. If you were to ask staff for recommendation, we would say, look at taking anything over the 5 million. So set the reversion at 5 million, and anything over could be used to help address some of the reductions that we're contemplating in 2026. That would, on projection right now, give the board an additional 5 million to look at and direct staff on how to allocate it towards some of the cuts and reductions that departments and offices are facing. Summer, anything you would like to add?
No, I think that's perfect. So just as a point of reminder is that we are in the process or have began months back presenting the board with a range of reversion, as the county manager said, and it is tracking pretty well, close to 10 million.
So 5 million were set aside, and we're saying anything over that, it could be $5 million.
Yes.
And again, and I'm just kind of restating what I think I heard what's said, and what I think I understand is like there's some risk to that. I mean, it's money we didn't necessarily count on having. It is one-time money, but it's kind of kicking a can down the road in a sense, but it's creating that bridge that many elected officials have asked us, we don't want to lose employees that maybe unnecessarily, prematurely, if there's any possible way to stab that off. So I see 3 hands. Commissioner Grant, I think, was first. Okay, Commissioner Grant, thank you. Commissioner Mejia. Go ahead, Commissioner Grant.
Well, and you guys, if you want to kick this question, I actually had a question on the agenda item, so I was trying to get in there at the end of that on the agenda item. But if you guys want to continue this conversation and then go back to that, I had a couple questions about advisory boards, so not to do with this.
Was advisory boards, where did I miss that somewhere?
No, I just was gonna ask Amy at the end of the agenda item, like, where we're at on, we've never revisited the HATC appointment to it, HATC or the Veterans Board or the TRL. And I wanted to make sure that just got on somebody's, if you could just write that down as getting on the radar of something we need to be addressing pretty soon.
Yeah, Commissioner Grant, we'll flag. Can you go over those three again?
TRL, Veterans, and Housing Authority.
Yeah.
We'll round up and bring a report
Yeah, that
back.
makes sense. We should probably, we'll circle back at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. That was what mine was.
Okay, perfect. Commissioner Fournier.
Yeah, thank you. Just this is good news, and it's a result of some of the actions we took earlier this year, is what I'm hearing. But I want to be cautious in how we reapply any of this, because like you said, it's one-time funds that we want to make sure we're not just continuing to use to spend on things that we can't truly afford. I would want to look at, like, I think it's the judicial with the judicial reimbursement program. Is that what it is?
Judicial impact fees.
Yeah, the judicial impact fees, and trying to make sure that our courts are whole, and that is bridge money. So we would be using it to plug a hole until the next funding cycle comes along, when we would receive those funds again. So like something like that, absolutely appropriate in my mind. But any like other things that are for ongoing, I want to be really, really cautious and mindful about that.
Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you. So, Chair, I agree, right? This is, this is one-time funding that is coming in the way of reversions, but, you know, if it's helping us minimize the impacts towards our offices and departments and towards staff, like I would want to help minimize that as much as possible. And so given that, you know, if we were to allocate the 5 million, the chair and I, yesterday, we brainstormed on just, again, hearing the comments, and we kind of went from the chair's budget proposal and we kind of added on to that. And so some of the things that we discussed was reverting an additional 700,000 to the auditor's office, reverting an additional 500,000 back to Superior Court, an additional 500,000 to the prosecutor's office, an additional 2 million to the sheriff's corrections office, an additional 60,000 to pretrial services, an additional 300,000 to the commissioner's non-departmental, and then covering JASCOM from there for the additional 250,000.
Is that whiteboard time? I know there's only 3 of us.
Yeah, I know. And then these were not on the list that me and Commissioner Menser listed up, but if possible, I would like to consider emergency management for their 307 and Public Works for the additional 190, but those were that's just me.
What does that all add up to under all those things?
It adds up to 4.8 million.
Can you go over the emergency management and public works again, please?
Yeah, emergency management, 307,000. And Public Works, 190,000. I know when me and Commissioner Menser, he was like, he didn't want to go up all the way up to the line just because of, you know, we don't know where that's going to land. So we were just kind of, but you know, since there was a little left over, I also wanted us to consider EMS and Public Works, but again.
I will quickly, if it's okay, I will quickly just make a comment as to the first ones that I looked at and kind of what my thought was. The auditor, that's about 70% of the remaining cut. She's argued, I think, pretty persuasively that the 70% of her budget that's elections, the cuts don't really yield any general fund savings because like 92.5% of it's billed out. So, and potentially she could increase that. So I think we're kind of cutting ourselves in the foot by cutting that piece of her budget. So that's where that came from. Superior Court was the bridge funding, as Commissioner Fournier said, to not to fill in 2025 loss, because state's on a fiscal year that's July to July. So it's really plugging the first half of 2026 judicial impact fees that court hadn't, it was absolutely out of their control that they lost those, and we've got them restored starting next summer. So that was where that came from. The animal services money, pretrial services, in my original proposal, it was 20,000 to try to save an employee, but some further number crunching by staff, that needs to be 60,000 to save that position in pretrial services. So I made that adjustment, or we talked about that adjustment. Commissioners, the 300,000 gets the 2 priority programs reserved that the board had indicated.
And if I could also say, it gets the priority program manager positions, and it also looks at the support staff for the commissioners with the 10 million that was already added back.
Right. It covers what I had heard during our discussions as the most important items that, you know, the commissioners were interested in there. Superior Court and then prosecuting attorney. I just feel like we have an interconnected system between public defense, Superior Court, District Court, and the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's office. Frankly, it does not make sense to me to not keep the prosecutor kind of in commensurate line with how we're handling those other interrelated parts of the system. Yes.
Sure. If I could make a recommendation, it'd be great for the board to first either vote or give direction on the 5 million reversion. And then we can shift to
Yes.
a final recommendation on what, Assistant County Manager will put this up on the board.
Okay, so those are just thoughts. Let's backtrack. I think County Manager is correct. Let's discuss at a point, like, should we use this reversion funding in this way? And then we can move on to how we would do that. Commissioner Fournier and then Commissioner Grant.
Not against this. I wanna do what we can, but I also want to caution that we need to do it responsibly. And, I do fear that, I would say that, we've all acknowledged we have a structural deficit. This does not fix that. I understand the rationale and the thought behind a move like this. I just want to, caution us against going too far, because ultimately our goal should be to fix the structural deficit. And this, we will, so if we do this, we will very likely be in the same position, having the same discussion about deficit in future years. And so it's like we have a like a service level and financial picture that's not it's not that we're not able to stay in, but we're going to stay in it. If we do this, we're going to stay in it like 1 or 2 more years. And so it is kicking the can down the road. I don't think that there's any magic money that's going to come from the state or from anything, out there that is going to bail us out. We can't count on those things. This is we have to rescue ourselves from the situation we're in. I don't believe that if we do this, that we should be expecting to pass a levy in the near future. I don't really think the community has an appetite for that. So just, as we proceed, let's proceed with caution.
I don't disagree with any of that, Commissioner Fournier. Appreciate those comments. Commissioner Grant, you're up.
I'm absolutely, of course, for using the funding. I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions. One would be that, are we only assuming 5 million more in dollars because we had already assumed 5 million before? Is that right, Ty?
I think that's right, but I'm looking to Summer.
Yeah, so this, oh, go ahead, Summer.
No, I was gonna ask to restate the question, but.
Oh, but this is predicated on us realizing 10 million in reversion.
Instead of 5.
Instead of the 4.
Yeah, and the 5 was kind of critical to just being, meeting basic, being over our red line as we call it. And
Yes.
so there may be an additional 5 million in reversion that was not counted on necessarily because of the slowed spending of all the groups here in the middle part of the year.
And
Okay, I was just wanting to clarify just to make sure that we had already assumed 5 million, and that's why we're adding only 5 million more, because the total reversion would be about 10 million.
That's what we're saying, yeah.
Yeah. And then, and I'm just to kind of comment on Wayne, Wayne saying one-time funding. I did an analysis and met with Summer and Leonard and Ty yesterday, and, we've reverted $10 million back of what I guess we call, if you want to call it one-time money, fine. But if it's not one-time money, if it's been reverted back for 4 years in a row, meaning that so I just want to say that I'm real confident in being able to use the reversion money. But this procedurally, I would like to ask this question. I thought we were talking about non-departmental funds today, and that tomorrow we were having this discussion. So, I definitely do want to, I want to just reemphasize that it's really important for me to see all of this on paper and in the model. And so I know that Summer had said that she'd get that model to us by tonight with all of these adjustments, and so that I can, we can see this all in one place of what this really does to the budget. So I'm just asking that if we make these decisions today around your guys' suggestions, that we get that updated into the model, and so I can have it on. I need to see it visually. Okay.
That's exactly why I'm bringing it this morning, and I flagged
Okay.
it for all of you guys so that, you wouldn't be totally blindsided. But because, we want to put it, if we're going to do this, then we need to give that direction to Summer so that it can be in the model for tomorrow, trying to finalize the targets. So we'll have a little more time, but it is a not preliminary question. Is the board ready to vote on on allocating that additional reversion revenue toward our fund. I mean, our budget gaps.
Is that a motion?
Just
I'll make that motion.
in the motion, it needs to be clear that if we realize.
Yeah.
So it's still a projection
We're
and
gonna use it for targets, but it has to come through.
yes, absolutely.
So my motion is to authorize the budget staff to prepare revised targets utilizing any reversion money above the $5 million that was estimated, which we're gonna for preliminary purposes estimate at an additional 5 million. And that's the motion, and then we can talk about how we would want her to deploy those resources to those targets. So is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion and a second regarding use of that additional reversion for 2026. Is there discussion on the motion? Additional? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I think I guess I'd have a discussion. Sorry, you just called for the vote. How confident are we that this is gonna be available? Yeah.
It's a summer question.
Yeah. I think I would say for summer is tracking the numbers and bringing in, as we look at the system and things hit the budget system, it's likely that this number is gonna come in. There's still a lot that has to shake out though.
I would just like to remind the board that there were several weeks of presentations where, when we were talking about the $36 million target in 2026.
Chair, point of order.
Yes.
I don't want to be rude, but like debate was closed and we're voting. Just technically, once that stops, that's when unless you want to open it, like somehow open it back up, but like technically, once that stops, we stop talking and we vote.
Is there objection to me reopening discussion on the motion that I called on, that I closed debate on? Take it that way. Okay, and it's a proper point of order, Commissioner Fournier. You're correct. So thank you for the reminder. Yeah, go ahead, Summer.
I was just gonna say that I did suggest in some presentations to the board that in 2025, we were projecting at minimum $5 million, 3% reversion, and that ideally we would incorporate that back into the exercise. So the fact that we're maintaining that spread between 3% and just under 10%, and it's looking like a stronger rate of reversion, I do feel confident that you will have the bulk of that $5 million to reallocate. But I will keep you updated as we go along.
Chair, I would also say that this whole process has really brought a lot of great conversations about how we can approach the reversion in the future. So we'll come with some recommendations in the future. One of the things I think once we close this budget that would be really good for the board to consider is immediately putting on our agenda to discuss a grow back plan. I say that because there are a lot of the economy is pretty uncertain right now. And if sales tax and when sales tax comes back, there are folks that are not on this list that need to be considered, and we can work that as a process so the board can methodically talk that through, come up with a plan so that if things get better into the future years, you know what the targets are, and that helps departments and offices also to plan. So just some perspective from my side.
I agree with that, and that'd be something that we could take up a little bit later. And Commissioner Grant also had some ideas, I think, that the county manager was referring to about how to maybe look at reversion in the future based on some kind of a different way that she handled it. And I thought that made sense. So we can have some good conversations, I think, in the light of these decisions to really try to, because as the county manager pointed out earlier, we're gonna have, 2027 is not going to magically resolve. We're going to do the best we can this fall or next year, but I do think that anything we can do to continue to tighten up dials and right size our situation is gonna be very, very valuable. So, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Yeah, that motion passes unanimously. Now, as to how we would want Summer to take that money and apply it, Commissioner Mejia has made a recommendation. Josh has put it up on the whiteboard, which not all of you can see, but if anyone has a question about the numbers, again, I'll restate it just for discussion. It basically puts 250 to JASCOM, 190 to Public Works. Can you remind me what that money was for? Is that
Parks.
Parks, okay, so parks. Pretrial services, 60,000, emergency services, 307, with that fully. That puts them, they had two scenarios, that puts them to their scenario 2.
Yeah.
Instead of their minimal scenario 1. We've got auditor, 700,000, commissioner, 300,000. 500 to Superior Court and prosecutor, and then a combined 2 million for the sheriff's office, which I believe that takes them around the $2.5 million cut that the sheriff has articulated, I think, to all of us in various formats would be something that could be managed, in terms of not closing jail dorms, and trying to minimize the public safety impacts to what we've got to do here. So that's a starting point for discussion. Does anybody want to talk? Commissioner Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was listening and lost my train of thought. I'm okay with, for today, accepting, what, just to work the suggestions that Commissioner Mejia has brought into the model, but I am preparing to come tomorrow with some different suggestions. And so I just wanted to, let folks know that. I also needed a point of clarification. I've been working through the revenue things and real quick, and this is a question I think for Summer. Based on the September 10th email that you sent out, it's the email or the 12th email that you kind of have written out all your all the different things that the week of wins email where everything's written out. It says in House Bill 2015 that revenues are anticipated at $7.5 million annually. And it says all these revenues will not be received into general fund. While they won't all go into general fund, it will reduce the remaining annual PDCLS implementation costs by shifting to PSST. The outcome is a 1.148 million reduction in expenditures in 2026. And then it says potential offset 6.3 million in reduction in GFF for allowable uses. So let me just ask for my own modeling, I wanted to ask this question. So for House Bill 2015, revenues are anticipated at 7.5 million annually, and all of that $7.5 million will eventually offset GF, right?
It will, because the board's decision was to reduce the public defense caseload standard from a 5-year implementation to 7 years for the first 2 years.
Mhm.
And then taking the remainder of that spread and applying it over 5 years. So that reduces the first year stand-up cost for the caseload standards to 1.148 million.
Yep.
That would be a reduction in the general fund expenditures, essentially reducing the estimated 2026 base budget for public defense. And then the remainder of the 7.5 million would be covered through the House Bill 2015 revenues that would need to go into some variable of a public safety sales tax fund, hopefully a new fund, for the board to then decide where those expenses will be.
And just one
Okay, thank
quick
you.
correction, just for, I know folks will watch this. Board decided to do a 10-year implementation. You said 7 years.
Well, it was 7.
They decided on.
No, the board decided to start, it does work out to a 7-year, but the board decided to do the 10-year implementation for the first 2 years and then toggle to a 5-year implementation.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Because Patrick didn't submit a 7-year proposal. I don't want them to get confused.
Right. So that means that the rest of the $6.3 million that is potential revenue for next year would be needing to be split between the court offices, right? And
That is, Commissioner Grant, that is what the budget team has been wrestling through, because there's a mix of some revenue and reducing certain expenses. And the reason it's not a quick turnaround is because a lot of that can't be put into a formula base. And so Summer and her budget team have been wrestling through how those decisions apply. If it was all revenue, it would be super easy. You just take the 10 million in revenue and give it all back. But we're having to go through and find out where certain, based on the decisions that were made, where certain dollars can be applied to certain departments, pull that out and drop their reduction rate with also balancing it out over all the departments. It's proven to be more challenging in showing the work than we originally thought, but they're making progress getting there.
Okay.
That's why when we were asked on Friday, can we get it 24 hours in advance? I was trying to give them space to have the time to work all that through, knowing that this document's going to be scrutinized by all the offices, departments, and the public. They're taking a lot of time to make sure that it all works through. Is that accurate, Summer?
That is accurate. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Mejia?
Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to make sure that I have my numbers, as I work through the modeling and the distribution of funds, I just want to make sure that I have them right, so I'm prepared for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mejia, you're up.
No, I just want to get some clarification from Commissioner Grant. You mentioned that you also had like some proposals, right? I'm wondering, do you have those now so like Summer can, also put them into the system and we're not. I know that today we were going to discuss non-departmental and,
I'm not ready to do that. I think that for me, I'm trying to come up with a proposal that thinks about, that takes into consideration your requests and Ty's requests and all the requests. And I think for me, the last piece of that was the non-departmental. And for me, I'm all about needing to see the whole picture before I can finalize my, I'm really close to having kind of a proposal for me. I think there's one thing that, I've been thinking about around some of the funding that goes to the sheriff's office, but I feel like I should just wait till tomorrow. I have something to, walk through with you guys and we'll do that tomorrow. I just need to hear the rest of the non-departmental items and then I can go from there. I have, a little bit of a different number for how much revenue we expect to come back in, because that $6.3 million in House Bill 2015 that's a lot of money. And that covers, a big portion of some of those, like the things you guys are saying right now, $500,000 back to Superior Court, $500,000 back to prosecuting attorney. That all of that money can come from House Bill 2015. So that shifts things too. And so anyway, for me, I really have to have it all written out and put into a table, and then I can walk you guys through it tomorrow.
Can I just get clarification from Summer? Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that real quick though, because I think that the 2015 money, I mean, we didn't say exactly how from an accounting perspective, it's going to be applied, but in an aggregate, we're saying that's already coming off of what the budget hole we have to patch. So we can't just go back and double count that money by saying, oh, that can cover this new 500,000 for Superior, new 500,000 for that's money's already kind of been allocated in how the board in the aggregate has treated it. Of course, there'll be
I know. For me, I'm just kind of what Leonard was just talking about, where my brain works, like what Leonard was saying, is that it's something that budget has to do in order to make sure that all of the money that's allowable uses of the money, it has to be in certain buckets. And so my brain only works that way. So I've been working out a model that makes sure that we think about all those pieces too.
Commissioner Mejia?
yeah, that was, I was like, when we approved, the 17.5%, even that reduction and then playing with the additional.
That used up.
Yeah, that used up,
Okay,
the 2015, because we were.
So Commissioner Grant's suggestion was that we can use Commissioner Mejia's numbers as a plug in, subject to additional discussion tomorrow, that where adjustments can be made, but is the board comfortable taking those numbers as a starting point for tomorrow's discussion in addition to what we discussed on Friday? Commissioner Fournier.
Chair, yeah, I'm comfortable with moving forward with those numbers, but I also just want to say that any other budget models or any individual that is outside of the budget team that is coming up with something, I would say, no surprises. So like if you just walk in and throw something down on us, it's gonna be hard to accept anything like that. My first, probably the first thing I'm gonna say is, well, turn it into the budget team. Should have been working with them to integrate, things that you see into that. Uh, and we have a budget team, we have a budget manager, budget director, and anything that we're going to look at needs to be vetted, needs to go through the professional staff. In my opinion, I don't want to undermine their efforts. I don't want to step over them or disrespect their professional work. So like that's going to be probably what you'll hear from me tomorrow.
Okay, so with that, we have direction on plugging those numbers into the model for discussion for tomorrow's discussion. Because we've approved to allocating the additional 5 million. Is there any other, we need a motion to do that?
So
Yes.
moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and then I have county manager and then Commissioner Klaus.
Good.
Okay, Commissioner Klaus.
Okay, I have a question. So the JazzCom 250,000, I just want to clarify that closes the rest of the gap.
Yeah,
The
it's on
first.
top. The
Okay,
chair's proposal put 250 back. This puts
Okay.
the additional 250 back.
perfect. Okay, thank you. And
Makes
then,
Jazz come whole.
okay, thank you. And then for plugging the numbers into tomorrow's model, I'm totally okay with that because it's a good starting point for the conversation. And I know thought has gone into that, but I might come in tomorrow with some slightly different numbers, which I know we probably all will be fine tuning that. So that's what I'll say, but I'm in favor of the motion.
Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Then we can go to non-departmental review. Commissioner Mejia.
Yeah, this is just a proposal as we were just brainstorming with Commissioner Menser. This is not, I knew probably changes were gonna be made as everyone has different priorities and wants to see, but we just wanted to provide if there was gonna be additional funding, a starting point for everyone to kind of see how those numbers could be allocated. Again, I threw in emergency services and public works, but that was not in the initial proposal that I
Throw it
wrote
out there and we can discuss that.
with Commissioner Menser, so, just,
All right.
it's just something, yeah.
It's a way to look at what we can do and we can fine tune it tomorrow and hopefully finalize those targets. That's the goal for tomorrow. So everybody be ready to do that. Is that right, County Manager?
Yeah, you just have to take the vote.
Okay, so vote on this motion, which is to restate it, is to use the numbers on the whiteboard there as laid out by Commissioner Mejia to direct staff to plug those into the model for finalization, preliminary finalization, because even those numbers just go into budgets, and then we'll have additional time to discuss. So for the finalization of the preliminary targets that the commissioners are going to set in tomorrow's discussion. And with no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I thought we already voted, but yeah, aye.
Well, we nailed it down then. Okay, so that's that. Now that allows us to go to the review of non-departmental, which is probably a worthwhile thing to do since we have the time and it's prepared to do, even though we don't necessarily have to remove, depending on how we handle things tomorrow, we may not have to do anything particular with this, but it's good for all commissioners to see what's here. So maybe County Manager, help us with that.
Thank you so much. I did want to start just by pointing out that a large component of the reduction for the non-departmental is in a transfer out to public health and social services. So I'll ask Summer to just briefly give a little bit of context for that, and then also ask our Assistant County Manager, Josh Cummings, to talk about the work that they've been doing in that important space.
Okay, thank you. On the bottom portion of the non-departmental items, there is a section for transfer and bond payments, and there are several items that are listed there that are operating transfers that have been basically on the books, if you will, for a period of time. They should have at some point been changed to a direct appropriation. We believe that we have the ability to transfer some of those expenses off of the non-departmental or county-wide services fund back to Public Health and Social Services for a short period of time. And I have been working with Assistant County Manager Cummings and Dr. Jen Freiheit reviewing the information. And I believe they have a plan that Josh can share with us.
Great. So board, I think it's important to, as the county manager and the budget manager relayed, there is a big chunk, approximately $840,000 that has been listed in non-departmental. A portion of that, a large portion of that is mandated services, things like epidemiologist and Board of Health and program assistants that are mandated by state services per RCW. So currently, Public Health is working to shift that funding from non-departmental into foundational public health and other fund sources within public health. That work is happening right now. We want to make sure that it's clear there are potentially discretionary services that will be researched on if they are able to be funded as well. But we're working on bringing those items back forward to the board so you can see a list of the potential community impact if they are not funded. So all these exercises happening at this time, I want to make sure you knew that public health is also working internally to take on the mandated services within non-departmental, but that they may impact currently funded programs that are discretionary within public health.
And we're working with Summer and Dr. Freiheit and Josh on looking at a plan, a 2-year 26-27 plan, to use available fund balance to smooth that over. We're just verifying the numbers, and I think in the next, this week, some staff come back from leave. They'll be able to sit with the department's budget team and our county budget team to look at that, which would mean that they're using some of those one-time funds to balance out 26-27 to minimize impacts to some of the discretionary programs that Josh mentioned.
I really appreciate the work of public health being a team player in this difficult time.
Absolutely.
Because they came through on the TST funding with looking at the millage fund, and then this was something that just with the changeover of new county manager, new budget and fiscal manager, new assistant county manager, new director, all within a relatively same time frame, wasn't on our radars per se, that this kind of transfer was taking place out of non-departmental. And as part of this conversation, board, we'd like the board, whether it's direction or emotion, for us to change the name. Non-departmental is doesn't really describe what comes out of this fund, and it looks like it's because it's attached to the commissioner's office. Without that description, it has created a lot of organizational questions. We would really prefer to change this fund name to countywide services, as anything in here should be going to, and the purpose for this fund is programs or payments benefit the entire county and it not tied just to the commissioner's office.
Yeah, I felt the same because it's created confusion with the commissioner's budget and what's that about? Because it incorporates a lot of things that are outside the commissioner's office. And then non-departmental, it doesn't, people get confused about it, even within the organization, much less in the public.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Fournier.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the clarification would be good. I'd like to understand public health's budget better, like holistically. I hear that some of this may be used for discretionary things. I hear that some of this may be used for mandatory things, but then I also hear that there's a considerable amount of reserves that public health has built up over the years. And I'd like an analysis of that, kind of where it came from, if it was in fact accumulated, in effect, because some of this general fund dollars is being moved over there and used towards discretionary things. And if perhaps, some of those discretionary or mandatory things could be funded through the reserves over time to draw that down, if it's if it's, outside of the realm of what's necessary.
Commissioner Fournier, thank you for that. We are researching that as well. It's unclear if that's a portion of the millage funds that are being used for TST, like we've discussed. It could potentially also be the opioid abatement funds that have not yet been accessed. So all that research is underway. So thank you for pointing that out.
And we look
Thank
forward,
you.
yeah, we look forward to bringing back a more comprehensive conversation with public health staff here. They can walk us through how the different buckets of their funding support their department.
So aside from the operating transfers, should we just go line by line through this list we've got in front of us, or how do we want to do that?
The yellow items, and I will point JASCOM is highlighted here only because this is what we originally presented. They are not part of this discussion because the board has restored funding to them. But the other highlighted items are what we are recommending to, as part of our reduction exercise, and that all the items minus JASCOM, just to be very clear, would get us to our number.
So you're saying reduce the yellow items would be cut, basically?
Yes. And then the part of discussion for the board could be to look at all the other items that are not highlighted. And if there's an item that we highlighted that is a particular concern, we can discuss that as well.
Can I ask the disability board expensive, the one?
The love.
I'm like, I don't know how to say it, but.
That one.
Yeah, the one that's highlighted for 50,000, like what?
That is additional funding that was set aside in the non-departmental or countywide services for administrative costs tied to the left one retiree medical benefits. And so when we did a look back, we haven't touched that funding in several years. So I think it was like a safeguard, if you will. It's not benefits related. It's not coded to benefits. It's in as professional services. So
There's a 350 for the same.
350 we need to keep. That is the budgeted amount for those members whose medical benefits are paid for by the county through the duration of, their life, if you will. And the $50,000 is money that was set aside to pay any potential administrative fees.
Two that are drawing my attention are the last two under in the middle there, where it says Visitor Convention Bureau and DNR Timber Tax Assessment. I mean, $500, but doesn't DNR timber money come to us?
This is the money that we were paying previously for assessments. And when I asked my team to take a look, they reported back that that money has not been spent down in the last couple of years. And then the Visitor and Convention Bureau amount has been $40,000 that's been spent, but it was not budgeted.
So let me ask this question, and then I'll go to Commissioner Grant. With animal services, if that is covered by what we do, by the proposal that was made just earlier this morning, then that's additional potential resources for non-departmental.
I think the JASCOM conversation was to help cut more so that it could offset the other part of the commissioner's office that deals with the staff. Right
So
now.
I'm saying, does that help staff by 250,000? If we do what we proposed this morning?
To ask your question again?
I mean,
Does that help the department?
does coming up with by using this new reversion money to cover this last 250,000, does that help us with commissioner staffing at all?
Yes, it absolutely does. So the two parts that help with the commissioner staffing is the decision you made to give back to the commissioner's office, and then the $10 million spread.
Plus the chair's proposal put money forward too.
The targeted.
290.
So there's the $10 million that was that was spread, and then the 9.7 targeted application. And it does account.
Yeah, what we've not done is, once the board, just like treat us as a department, once the board decides on the final target, we'll come back around on the commissioner's office and send out hey, this is how much additional revenue all came in. You'll see it on the sheet on Wednesday. And then it'll create relief on which positions were even mentioned as a part of our exercise. I will note that in this yellow context, correct me if I'm wrong, Summer, but I believe outside of the JASCOM, we might be over our target by 500,000.
It is about 500,000
Yeah.
currently.
So if there's anything you wanted to add back, you have about a $500,000 window to do that.
But that's where I wanna make sure I'm clear, because we've discussed, and maybe this doesn't need to be decided or discussed right now, but we've been discussing commissioners and non-departmental kind of as a clump in terms of like cutting, like they need to get to a cut target that we've set, like collectively.
No, we've been doing it as separate.
Separate.
Oh,
So what we did is when we put the commissioner's office out, then we looked at could we cut more non-departmental to create relief in the commissioner's office?
yes.
Which means we'd have to cut, because this is all pretty much staffing, and these are all other items. and-
Right. So I'm just trying to see if, like, what I'm trying to say is, if we're over in non-departmental, I would wanna use that. Like, I wouldn't wanna just restore something from non-departmental. I would like to do what you initially said, which is use that for relief and staffing and commissioner's side.
We can absolutely do that.
I mean, that's the priority. I mean, I'm not seeing anything here that I'm gonna lose sleep over, but I am gonna lose sleep over some of the other things. Commissioner Grant.
Yeah, I have some questions. Uh, okay, so well, one of the things, I mean, I guess I'll bring up on here is that I see that we don't have meeting supplies highlighted, but we have miscellaneous. So miscellaneous supplies on that top line, it looks like, you know, we spent $4,316 on miscellaneous supplies. So for me, it's like bringing that number down to, you know, leave 5,000 in the budget for that. Seems reasonable to me, but I have a question about meeting supplies for like lunches and swearing in. Looks like we overspent that budget and, you know, and I guess for me, that seems like one of the areas where I feel like we should be cutting. You know, I guess for me, I came from the state and we had very strict rules on lunches, and generally when we had lunches, if we were gonna pay for things, we did it ourselves, or you could spend no less than like $9 a piece on a lunch or something like that. And so I feel like you know, we should be reducing the meeting supplies budget. And then the last question, so those are my comments. And then I have a question. So on the transfer and the bond payments that are highlighted down here, I'm not sure I understand how we can just cancel out bond payments. And so if someone could explain that to me, that would be great. And I am definitely not a fan of touching any of the Lake Management District money. So I just want to make that known. But if someone could explain to me, you know, if we were going to not make a bond transfer payment, how do we do that? I mean, that isn't, yeah.
So the bond payments are not highlighted in yellow, so they're not up for consideration. Those payments have to be made. The meeting supplies, we can remove the verbiage that says lunches, but that particular line item is specifically for swearing in ceremonies and any costs associated with that. So that would be yourselves as the Board of Commissioners and any other electeds. If we're not anticipating any type of swearing in next year, we can reduce that if you'd like. The miscellaneous supplies, that is a budget that has been variable over the years, and that is for any supplies necessary for the county, across the county, that is at the commissioner's discretion, right? That's why that budget has been grossly underspent this year. That could be for anything that might be needed, say, by the clerk or admin staff to put on trainings or something countywide. And then as far as the any other legacy items that are listed in the lump of transfers and bond payments, those are items that we would and continue to take a critical look at. So if the board makes some decisions today, then we can determine what that amount of reduction would need to be.
then regarding the lake management districts, that was a carryover from funds that were established to get them up and started. It looks like it never fell off.
Well, no, not exactly.
Oh, okay.
It's a combination.
I will get to that in a minute. Sure. On the meeting supply issue, I guess what I was thinking about was, I mean, we could certainly cut back certain things that are provided for during meeting, but what I was thinking about was our quarterly or sort of quarterly fifth Wednesday countywide elected officials event, which we've started and I think has gained momentum. And I think that would be something to preserve, even if we cut all the other, slice out all the other uses of that. I don't know what other commissioners think. On Lake Management District, so I don't know what the $50 is, but the 21,000 and 6,200, I'm not sure exactly why those numbers are there. 21,000 is my recollection of kind of what this was about. This was the result of a long, difficult, protracted series of meetings and arguments and brutal board sessions about how the lake management districts are funded and charged for indirect costs. They did not feel that they should have to pay any indirect costs. And we basically decided at a certain point where we had budget capacity to, on a kind of year by year basis, to subsidize their indirect costs. Commissioner Edwards wanted that to be policy. I agreed, as I was always very clear, like, if we've got to have money to be able to do this, I'm not committing that this is how it's always going to be done forever. But, now we brought in Assistant County Manager Gelder, who kind of worked through a whole different model and was very successful in changing the relationships. And the county we tried to reduce those indirect, through working through a whole new process. I was hoping that indirect costs, I think, are much lower than they were. So yeah, like the 21,000 might be historical because we've changed the way they're billed and the way that's all done. So I don't want to ignore that history and think that this is just something it's not. If it relates to that board subsidization, and Jennifer knows what I'm talking about, then we would need to just make sure we understand that and we're doing that intentionally.
So let me jump in.
Not by accident.
Let me jump in real quick. So jumping off of former Assistant County Manager Gelder's reformation.
Yeah.
So we believe, public health believes currently, that these are the historical commissioner decisions, but that they haven't been spent, and that the new pathway is a 5% administrative cost. We don't call it indirect any longer.
Okay.
We call it a 5% administrative cost. That's the work that Stewart does.
Right.
That's the work that public health does. And so we're actually categorizing that right now to see if that 5% is enough. But we need to do that work. That's why we're not touching this 21,000 or 6,200. What I can do is engage with LMDs if necessary, but I think that we've got a good path forward at the 5% on the administrative costs.
Where does that 5% show up in
The
public health?
Exactly, yeah. And it's part of the fees that they agreed to pay with Gelder's partnership.
But let's do this, because I think, no, that's great. Thank you, Josh. I think there's 3 points of history from when it was in Public Works to now it's in Public Health. The former Assistant County Manager did a great job working that and smoothing that over. It's such a small amount, just leave it there until we can figure that out. And then we can determine in an amendment or next conversation when we come back off, and we can talk about, does that need to go away because the 5% is addressing it. It's such a low amount, it's not.
I think that's probably the answer, but yeah, I just wanted to flag that, like, before, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and get people riled up when it's totally unnecessary.
Yeah, and I think just the optics maybe of cutting it could get folks riled up before we have a solution and a path forward.
So I have the ball on that for the conversation.
Yeah.
Perfect, all right. So other questions and comments about non-departmental?
Yeah, I have a couple
ahead.
more. Sorry,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm.
So I think with the DNR timber tax assessment, I think it was when we were doing the Summit Lake. Because we had to go through this whole assessment for it. And
That would have been way more than $500. I think this is some kind of legacy thing.
Really?
Yeah, because
There are quite a few things on this list that are legacy items that should have been cleaned up at some point in the past and weren't. And so we are committed to looking through and finding out what doesn't need to be spent. After a quick review with my team, we are confident that the bulk of the highlighted items, if the board chooses, can be removed.
Yeah, for me, like, looking at the meeting supplies and the miscellaneous supplies, like, I feel like they could be combined into one and a new amount set.
Sure.
Because with that, right, I would like to have the employee recognition services as well. I'm guessing that is part of like what we do throughout the year. And so,
Can add that one back.
For
in.
like the ice creams and the.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the morale building, effort they do. Is it in the early or late spring, early summer?
Mhm.
so yeah, for me, it's like looking at all these, for the discretionaries, like, can we like come up with a new number on that, based on the new events that are being put on, plus the employee recognition and, swearing in, county offices are up for election next year as well as two commissioners. So I think it's considerations that we have to have.
Yeah, so what we're hearing is, the lake management district items, the miscellaneous supplies, those two categories, and then staff recognition, employee recognition items.
Yeah, I don't know if we can just come up with a new number of, all of it
We can do that.
Yep, you absolutely can.
combined.
Commissioner Grant's, I mean, her point is, I think, good. It's like, if we're spending 5,000, that's a huge reduction, but there's no reason to take it all out if
Right.
if we can get $205,000 of reduction and take what we actually need.
And I think what we wanted to do also is for you to see the entire list so
Yeah.
that you knew that you could look at any of
Wants to
the,
be addressed would be
right,
yellow.
and if there's anything that sticks out to you that you're like, hey, why would we still pay for that? Let's consider cutting that. I think the staff did a great job of looking through what they thought was important, but your eyes on this is equally valuable.
Commissioner Grant?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Carolina a little bit around, I would rather put employee recognition back, and and maybe reduce it some, but, I think it's really important that we have, that employees feel valued. And then I wanted to just comment back on, your comment, Ty, about the fifth Wednesdays. I totally agree that I think that those fifth Wednesdays are really, like, they've been great. But I will mention, I feel like we should reduce the spending at those, because for both times we delivered a whole bunch of leftovers to out to the jungle. And so just being a little more cautious around, and reducing, I think that it shows something on our end that if we say, look, we value these things that we do, but we need to be a little more fiscally responsible about the amount that we're spending when we're spending money on these kinds of items. And that's kind of how I feel about that.
A great perspective,
Yeah, I
Commissioner
don't
Grant.
disagree with that at all.
We've actually had the same level of perspective, gauging how many we invite, multiple hundreds, how many show up, and then how many actually eat. So
A
the
lot of
team,
people come and don't eat.
so the team is working to, they've been adjusting it down actually the last few meetings, but we can take a harder look and go even further.
Okay, other comments on non-departmental items?
Oh, I had a question.
Yes.
Sorry if this is already covered, but the consultant cost for countywide projects, it doesn't look like we've spent any of that. And I was just wondering what, if anything, that's used for.
It's used for any type of consultants that you need for any countywide projects that the board deems necessary for that particular year.
So an example would be if if it's, we don't know if it would be, but if it's deemed that we need a consultant to help us with a new rate study that would affect the entire county, that's where we would go to access that level of.
4,000 is really not gonna cover
no.
any consultant fees, so it
Yeah.
really doesn't really accomplish anything. We're
That's
gonna have
kind
to
of
budget for that, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why probably it's in yellow.
okay.
I mean, if it were $100,000 budget that was being consistently used, then we'd have a, you know, a better conversation to be had.
Again, I think some of these are historical conversations have happened and rolled over, and so in our process of turning over rocks, it's also a great process of doing some fall cleaning.
And recalibrate what the line item budgets are, right?
Okay, well, does that take us where we need to go, board?
Yeah.
For this morning, I really appreciate everybody's, this was a good meeting and,
Grant.
yeah, Commissioner Grant, go ahead.
Really quick question. So, you know, I'm just looking at, I think like the chair's budget proposal, has on it that the non-departmental and commissioner's budget would have about, would be, so here's what I'm asking is that what is the total that we're going, I mean, can we agree on more or less a total from the non-departmental before tomorrow so that we can adjust it into the model?
The total that I have from the prior meetings of the distribution, the 10 million and then the targeted 9.7 is,
No, I meant just from the non-departmental.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay.
The total amount of those two buckets of money, if you will, is $611,119.20.
Okay.
That's the amount off of the original cut.
That is correct, and that's based on prior decisions last week. Soft decisions.
So 611,000 off of the 26% cut exercise from the beginning of the whole process.
Yeah, and we heard the comments from the board and then to readjust some of the categories, so we all. I think there's two parts.
And that's before what we said today.
That is correct.
So then there's a proposal for an additional 300.
That we would look to put back into, not the non-departmental, because there's
Yeah.
really no needs per se. It's the commissioner's office and how it impacts staff.
Okay, so so wait, I think what I heard you say, Ty, was that today's discussion is gonna yield about 300,000?
Proposal that will be plugged in for tomorrow is an additional 300 to the
Okay.
commissioner's budget on top of what Summer just summarized, which was previous decisions.
So 911-ish, and that's good. That's good enough. Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else for this morning? All right, we're back at 2 p.m. for this meeting. It'll be a long meeting, so be ready for that.